Welcome, everyone. Welcome. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Goodness, this is what Ashland looks like. That's right, that's right. So, my name is Gina, if anybody doesn't know me, and I am with Ashland Together and the Ashland Sunrise Project. And for those who want to know more and who would like to be on our mailing list, H has put the QR codes around the room that you can scan and get connected to us. So we appreciate that. And before we start our program this evening, I just want you all to know that this is a safe place. And I would like to thank the Unitarian, and Sean, where are you, for making this happen. Amen. So that's enough out of me. I'm going to pass this over to Alma Rosa. Thank you so much for coming, and I'll see you soon.
Hi, everybody. Oops, is it on? Yes, it is. All right. So, as Gina said, welcome. I'm Alma Rosa Alvarez, and I am one of the small presenters this evening. John Almaguer will be the sort of headliner. He's my husband also. And then Kathy Kesey, our dear friend, will also be doing a little bit of a presentation. She's with UNETE. Before we get started today, though, we are going to give a little bit of time. As you've been following the news, well, things don't look that great, and I think that's really an understatement, right? And our Ukrainian brothers and sisters have definitely, this is me speaking, they've been stabbed in the back, and they are suffering. And we have a Ukrainian contingent here today that will walk up so that we can have a moment of silence. As we're thinking about our Ukrainian brothers and sisters, I also want to invite you for the moment of silence to think about also all of the other people that are getting affected by the various types of policies that we have, thinking about our Palestinian and Israeli Jewish brothers and sisters, thinking about our trans brothers and sisters or non-binary siblings, right? And thinking about all of the folks that are being adversely affected. So we're gonna have our Ukrainian brothers and sisters come on up, and we're gonna have a moment of silence to think about, pray for all of these folks that are being affected. So I'll ask them to come on up. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Gina Duquesne, for welcoming us to this event. All of the folks that you see in front of us live here in Ashland, and they have generously agreed to be here tonight. And we're going to start by the singing of the Ukrainian national anthem. If you would like to rise, we'd really appreciate that. Thank you.
Ні слава, ні воля, ще нам, браття українці, усміхнеться доля, згинуть наші воля. роса на сонці, запануєм і ми, браття, у своїй сторонці. Душу й тіло ми положим за нашу свободу і покажем, що ми браття козацького роду. Душу й тіло ми положим за нашу свободу і покажем, що ми браття козацького роду.
Luda Sokol, who is here, has written a prayer, and she's going to read it in Ukrainian, and then I will read the translation in English. So bear with us. This has happened very quickly, and we just know we have your support.
Боже єдиний, нам Україну храни, захисти нас від біди, від вогню і темної ночі.
Great God, the one and only, protect our Ukraine. Protect us from harm, from fire, and from the dark of night. Strengthen our defenders, give them courage and power so they return home safe and sound. Those who stand in the fire for us, fighting for our land with every breath.
Бережи матерів, що чекають на своїх дітей, тих, хто втратив серце, не витримує болю.
Watch over the mothers waiting for their children and those who've lost with hearts too heavy to bear the pain.
Допоможи зберегти віру в мир і в силу, щоб знову весна прийшла на нашу землю.
Help us keep faith in peace and in strength so that spring may come again to our land.
Дай сил тим, хто рятує, тим, хто допомагає, тим, хто небайдужий і серце віддає.
Grant strength to those who save, to those who help, to those who give their hearts to others.
Бережи дітей, щоб вони сміялися без страху, щоб в їхніх очах світилася радість і спокій.
Protect our children. Let them laugh without fear. Let their eyes shine with joy and peace.
Збережи Україну, її душу, її серце, щоб ми побудували майбутнє, яке не втратимо.
Preserve Ukraine, its soul, its heart, so we can build a future we will not lose.
Нехай наші міста зазнають відродження і спокою. Нехай мир повернеться на рідну землю.
Let our cities rise again in peace and renewal, and may peace return to the land we call home.
Не дай нам втратити нашу гідність, нашу свободу, нашу душу. Збережи Україну, щоб ми змогли розцвітати і створити майбутнє, гідне кожного з нас.
Do not let us lose our dignity, our freedom, our soul. Protect Ukraine so we may help it blossom and create a future worthy of each one of us.
Дай нам сили вистояти, не втратити гідність, щоб зберегти єдність, волю, віру в перемогу.
Give us the strength to endure, to hold to our pride, to preserve our unity, will, and belief in victory.
Не дай зламати нас ні війною, ні тягарем. Ми вистоїмо разом, і буде наша земля вільною.
Do not let us be broken by war or by burdens. We will stand together and our land will be free.
Збережи Україну, Боже, в серці, в душі, бо її краса в людях, що не зламалися в боротьбі.
Protect Ukraine, God, in our hearts and souls, for its beauty lies in the people who never broke in their fight. Slava Ukraina.
Слава Україні!
Luda wrote a message that she wants to share with everyone, and it starts with the words, "Dear friends."
Дорогі друзі, я хочу поділитися з вами, чому українці продовжують боротися за свою свободу, землю і право жити в мирі і в безпеці.
Dear friends, I want to share with you why we Ukrainians continue our fight for freedom, land, and the right to live in peace and security.
Наша боротьба – це не просто питання території, це боротьба за право на самовизначення, за наші основні цінності. Ми хочемо вирішувати свою долю самостійно, без втручання зовні. Ми хочемо мати можливість жити в країні, де поважають людські права, де є справедливість і свобода слова, де ми маємо право вибирати своє майбутнє.
Our struggle is not just about territory, it is a fight for the right to self-determination, for our core values. We want to decide our fate independently without external interference. We want to live in a country where human rights are respected, where there is justice and freedom of speech, where we have the right to choose our future.
Ми боремося не тільки за себе, але і за всі ідеали, що об'єднують нас і іншими вільними народами. Наше прагнення до свободи і демократії – це те, що робить нас сильними. Ми віримо, що свобода – це право кожного народу, і ми готові захищати це право за будь-яку ціну.
We fight not only for ourselves, but for the ideals that unite us with other free nations. Our desire for freedom and democracy is what makes us strong. We believe that freedom is the right of every nation, and we are ready to defend this right at any cost. When we face aggression, we do not give up. Your support means a lot to us. Your belief in our values helps us hold on. Together, we can build a peaceful world where every nation has the right to self-determination and freedom.
Ваша підтримка для нас дуже важлива. Ваша віра в наші цінності допомагає нам триматися. Спільно ми можемо бути мирний світ, де кожен народ має право на самовизначення та свободу.
Thank you for standing with us, for your support during this difficult time. We will not give up. We will stand firm and achieve victory because we are fighting for the future we deserve.
As the folks make their way back, let's engage in, as the folks go back, let's engage in a moment of silence, all right? Thank you so much. All right, so it's my pleasure to introduce John Almaguer, who is going to tell us a little bit about some of the current changes in immigration. So, John, come on up.
Can you? Let's see. Can you hear me? Okay, perfect. Okay. First of all, thank you for coming out this rainy evening and to hear the delightful and cheerful news I'm going to share with you. My name is John Almaguer. I'm an immigration attorney. I've been working in this valley for nearly 25 years. The work I do is helping people obtain their residency, remove the conditions from their residency.
We've been asked if you can raise the mic volume.
Where's the mic?
Sorry about that.
Where's the volume on? Oh. There we go. Does that help? Maybe? Okay. So, naturalization, obtaining residency, DACA, waivers for unlawful presence, consular processing, adjustments of status. I've been working with nonprofits and for the last several years in the private sector, the most recent 2 years with Stout Law. So I want to start off by saying I want to see how quickly I could go through this, because as much as I like hearing my voice and no one else does, I want to hear from you guys. And so I want to see if I can answer any questions you might have. And so Gina and I first talked about this because there are some presentations going on for the immigrant community. And so the concern was, the ask was, can people, allies, come to those meetings? And some of these meetings were in schools, and so the schools thought they might be inappropriate to have outside people coming in just because of security reasons. People are nervous right now. And so I said, well, let's do something in English. I'll present what I'm basically presenting to people. You're going to get a condensed version of it tonight. And then my colleague, Dr. Alma Rosa Alvarez, will talk about, and Kathy Kesey, always many, many years doing things with Kathy, presentations, and she'll also let us know of ways that we could be good allies. Okay, so one little word of caution, 2 words of caution. 1, I like to use humor because when I talk to my community, I do not have to explain to them the seriousness of the nature. I need to calm them down. So I like to infuse humor into my presentations. So if you see humor here, feel free to laugh. It's meant to be laughed at, because I'm trying to bring you down. I'm trying to bring down, calm down so we can learn. 2, you may have to report me to Tom Homan, because he says that talking about rights could be obstructing justice. So I went after AOC for it, and I want to let you know this is my 6th time in 10 days that I'm about to disobey Tom Homan. Okay. I also don't like to be in one space. So I'll try to make sure I talk into my lapel. So why are we here? Okay, we know why we're here. 26 executive orders passed the first day alone. George Bush, in his first 2 terms, on his first day, 0 executive orders. Okay. To date, we have 53. Now it might be too loud. Go back? So I can't go down? Damn, excuse me. Okay. Well, that kind of ruins the whole thing, doesn't it? Okay. So the executive orders have gone from renaming the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America, ending birthright citizenship, and outlawing paper straws because they're disgusting. But some of the things that have really hit the immigrant community, the discussion about mass deportations. As I said, ending birthright citizenship, terminating the sensitive locations memo, the expansion of expedited removal, and Laken Riley, which now includes shoplifting as a crime that merits mandatory detention. Okay. So, our king has said that he plans to deport more than 13 million people, and the cost does not matter. That whatever it costs, he's going to do. Now, we always know that people could talk, and then there's what your bank book says, and the cost of a mass deportation would be at least $315 billion. We don't have the detention space for such action, which is why we're seeing the attempted use of Guantanamo Bay and countries like Venezuela, El Salvador, who have accepted detainees that are not from their countries. Okay, so this is something to try to deal with the fact that we don't have enough detention space. We don't have any detention space in the state of Oregon, so anyone that's detained here gets sent to Tacoma, Washington. They don't have the manpower. They don't have the manpower to search, and so that's why they're using different federal officers for the time being to try to supplement the lack of ICE officers. Now, the only way that he would be close to reaching his goals is if different departments sign what's called 287G memos, which are basically saying we'll go ahead and do the job of immigration for them. And so far, I think I've read something of over 63 jurisdictions, different sheriff's departments, police departments have signed these memorandums of agreement, which are very generous if you think about it. It's like saying, hey, Joe, you own a plumbing business, I own a plumbing business, let me do your plumbing business for free. Okay, so that's what these local law enforcement offices are doing when they sign these agreements. Also trying to end the freeze on detentions, mandatory detentions, so ICE holds. So ICE holds are when ICE asks a police department to hold someone. So I've been detained for a DUI. Oh, since we know John doesn't have status, could you hold him so we could go pick him up? Okay, so mass deportations, and this is one way he might try to get around that, but this is mass deportations. Birthright citizenship, ending it. 3 judges. As you can see, this baby's not having any of it. Rightfully so. 3 judges have said that this is unconstitutional. One judge in Seattle said it was blatantly unconstitutional and questioned whether a lawyer was in the room when this executive order was drafted. Okay, so basically what this order was implying was, or hoping for, was that any child born to people who are not of the United States. So if the mother has no legal status, nor this father, not a US citizen. If a mother is in the United States temporarily on a student visa or a tourist visa, father doesn't have status, baby born, not a US citizen. Okay, this would require a constitutional amendment, and the Equal Rights Amendment that failed took over 20 years to go through. So this is a Trump administration of trying to get this through while he's still alive. And judges are saying, no, you have to go through the process. Sensitive locations. Sensitive locations, probably near and dear to people in the church, but sensitive locations was a policy that came out under Biden that basically said, not that we cannot go into places of worship, not that we can't go into schools, not that we can't go into hospitals or clinics, but we better have a darn good reason for doing so. El Chapo Guzman better be in that place to justify going in during a mass service. Otherwise, stay away. DHS has rescinded this memo, and it's been said that this action empowers the brave men and women of CBP and ICE to enforce our immigration laws and catch criminal aliens, including murderers, rapists who have entered our country illegally. Okay, so with Trump, there's the sound and the fury. And so far, it's the same thing. They're not wanting to go into sensitive locations unless they have a good reason to do so. I think churches are pretty much being told, hey, maybe don't open up your basement and make it a sanctuary for 60 people who are evading arrest, because we'll go in on that. But if they're looking for John Almaguer, they're not going to be busting into this church to pull me down. They're going to wait for me to be at my house or in a public space. So the local ICE office, and here's the hard thing, right? It's like every office has its culture. If you hear the Seattle office speak, very scary stuff. I've been here long enough that I've seen this local ICE office just do a 180. When we first came here in the mid-90s, Medford was the Wild West. This office had more deportations than the Portland office, and the numbers don't justify that. We just had overzealous officers. Now this is one of the offices that's being looked at as not doing their jobs because they're not detaining enough people. And they're reasonable. The expansion of expedited removal. Okay, this is one of those really sexy, complicated law things to explain. Expedited removal basically means it's like a deportation express. It has the same power as if you were deported. So I really can't cross this border? Hello? Hello? Can you? Okay. So expedited removal, can you guys, but you can hear him? Okay, thank you. Expedited removal is basically a deportation without seeing a judge, but it has the same weight as if you were deported formally by a judge. A lot of due process problems with this, one could assume. Okay, this was originally brought in April '97. It was expressly used for people trying to come in through a port of entry. Port of entry is anywhere where you pull out your documents so that you can be inspected and admitted into the United States. If you're hiding in the trunk of a car or you're whipping out a fake green card, you would get expedited removal. In August 2004, that was expanded to anywhere within 100 miles of the Mexican border, and if you can't prove that you've been here for at least 14 days. This administration has expanded it to anywhere in the United States if you cannot show that you've been here for at least 2 years. Okay, so ICE says we have the discretion to use this. It's not our tool of preference for now. Okay, but what we're telling people is that they should be collecting 2 years of documentation that they've been here for at least the last 2 years. What this does is this gives them the chance to go through the immigration court process where there's more due process available to them. They can look at things like cancellation of removal, so that's fighting a deportation. So they have options, because if you're given an expedited removal, you could be gone within 48 hours. Okay, so this expansion is something that we're trying to educate people on, trying to gather documentation. And I've had people say, you want me to carry 2 years worth of pay stubs on my person at all times? And the wicked part of me says, yeah. But then I said, or you could scan it into your phone, which works like a computer, and have it in your phone so that you could show you've been here for the 2 years. So it's not a get out of jail card, but you're gonna go through the legal process and you have the chance to speak to a lawyer, because you do have a right to a lawyer. The government doesn't pay for it, but you have a right to a lawyer. Lake and Riley, a lot of problems with this, okay? One, mandatory detention is a concept where ICE has to hold you. They don't have the discretion to let you go home and go to court. They have to detain you. Okay, so they're trying to expand mandatory detention to include shoplifting. Okay, so if a kid takes a Red Bull from the local convenience store and ICE were to find out, mandatory detention. So on an arrest, not a conviction, on an arrest. Okay, so due process, once again, kind of, Also, another major problem with this is immigration is in the sphere of the federal government. And what this law purports to do, is give power to the states to sue the government if the government releases a person that they think should be detained. So basically, it's giving the state governments the ability to force the federal government to enforce immigration laws, but never gives the states the ability to question the harshness of immigration laws. Oregon has been a sanctuary state since 1987. It was recently re-upped in 2021 and given some teeth. So basically, a sanctuary state, sanctuary cities, there's no clear definition, but mostly there's no information sharing with the federal government for immigration purposes only. Okay, so if a police officer detains you because you're driving too fast, they're not supposed to ask your national origin, and very less share that information with an immigration officer, okay? Oh. It covers public bodies. Now, we always think about law enforcement, but public bodies also includes public libraries, public schools, the universities, SOU, RCC. So what this means is that RCC and SOU and Walker Elementary and Ashland High School all have liability under the Oregon sanctuary laws. So, darn it. Okay. So you can take legal action. If you feel someone's violated the laws, you can take legal action. You can sue in court. You can sue in court for civil damages. So if you're having to pay an attorney to try to get you out of deportation, if you're having to try to get some money back because dad got deported because someone at a school district or someone at a university decided to help make America great again and hand over documents they shouldn't be handing over, they're on the line. Since 2021. Phone numbers where you could call if you feel the sanctuary law has been violated. Okay. As great as our sanctuary laws are, it's only for state bodies, not the federal government. And we know that there's not enough ICE officers, so what's going on? They're using CBP, the FBI, the DEA, the Bureau of Alcohol, ATF, and the US Marshals. Okay, so they're deputizing these agencies to try to enforce the law, the shock and awe that this administration wants to show that promises made, promises kept. Okay? Now, I just think it's a matter of time. And I think we're starting to see some of it in other areas, and this is going to come up soon, when they realize that not everyone detained are hardened criminals. When they see that on a plane to El Salvador, of the 44 people flown back, only 7 had criminal records, collateral arrests. I think it's only a matter of time before people start saying, you're using my tax money to no longer investigate the next Pablo Escobar, but to pick up Joe, my gardener. Maybe that's not a wise use of my money. Maybe other people had it right when they had priorities on real criminals. So here's Homan's favorite part. This is where we start going over rights. Okay. Basic vocabulary that I go over with people so that they're prepared. Do you have a warrant? Are you state, local law enforcement, or are you from the federal government? So does the Oregon sanctuary laws apply or not? Because if the Oregon sanctuary laws apply and you're APD, you better not be asking me my legal status only because you think I shouldn't be here. Now, if I committed a crime, and even then, I've had some law enforcement say, we try to stay away from asking national origin questions altogether because we don't want to be held liable. Okay, I want to see a judge, I will not sign, I don't understand. So these are the types of things. So when people say, well, you know, it's a political discussion, this immigration thing, it's about politics. We don't want to get into politics. For one aspect, but for the immigrant population and those who love them, it's a human rights issue. So what do you do when ICE comes to you? You don't have to let them in unless they have a court order. Ask them to show you the court order. Ask them to slide it under your door. If you don't have a door, someone said, John, I don't have a door that you could slide something underneath. I said, open your window crack. We all have windows, hopefully. Open your window crack and have them slide it in. Because if you open the door, that will be seen as consent. If your child opens the door, so we're having to educate people, hey, don't let your kids just run and open the door and say, Mommy, there's a man here holding a piece of paper. Okay, so darn thing. An arrest warrant allows ICE, sorry guys, allows ICE to enter your house. An arrest warrant, a judicial warrant, but an ICE warrant does not. The difference between the two, gosh, I really wish you could see that clearer. On the left is a warrant for removal deportation. That's from ICE. An ICE officer will always show you this. So I actually had someone, so once again, talking about the practicality of this being your lived experience. People said, how do you know when they're ICE and not just thugs acting like they're ICE? An ICE officer will always show you that warrant, okay? Now, that warrant doesn't give them the chance to go into your house necessarily, unless you invite them in. Now, what's on the right, our president knows very well. It's a judicially signed warrant. And the reason I wish you could see this better is because it's for Mar-a-Lago. So he knows this really well. So if there is a judicial order, so even they have all your information. They have your name, they have the right address, they have the dates, it's still valid. You still have your constitutional rights to remain silent. But you may wish to step out of the door, step outside. Why? Because we're talking about collateral arrests. So if they come in tonight looking for me, and none of you guys have papers either, guess what? Potentially, you guys could be seen as collateral arrests. So, if they show up,
The camera people are wanting you to stay in the light.
Oh.
For the people at home.
Oh, okay, it's live stream. Okay. I'll go back. I feel oppressed. But, okay, so if they come to your house, and this is a hard sell, and Kathy and I have had to do this to a lot of public presentations when people still felt somewhat safe to come to them. And it's a hard decision to make, but you have to hit this point where you say, how do I mitigate the damages here? How do I not make a bad situation even worse? So if they got the paperwork for you, step outside. I've asked some ICE officers what they would do in this situation, and they said, of course, if they open up the door and we see a bunch of guns and drugs, we're going in. Or if the warrant names 5 people and only one's coming out, we're going in. But if we're only looking for one person and everything looks okay in there, we got what we want. Okay, so that's something, I talk about crisis management when I do this to our community. And crisis management is how do you mitigate damages, and it's stepping outside if they're there for you and they have all the paperwork in order. Now, if you're placed into ICE custody, don't resist. State you wish to remain silent, ask for a lawyer. Don't say anything, don't sign anything, don't make any decisions without consulting a lawyer, because if you do, then you could be signing away your rights. Don't discuss your immigration status with anyone other than a lawyer. You may be visited in jail. Do not talk to an immigration officer, because they can try to twist things to get you to talk. Only talk when you have a lawyer around. Read all your documents. If you don't understand, you're unable to read them, inform the officer. And remember your A number. That's an alien number, because you're going to want to give it to your family so they know where you are, especially if you're getting sent to Guantanamo Bay. This is in Spanish. I apologize, didn't have time to find it in English, but my colleague, Dr. Alma Rosa Alvarez, will have the link on that shows you how to get to the English page, but this is a nice locator. This is the way, if you have the A number, you can try to locate where your family member is. Important resources for y'all to have. PIRC, Portland Immigration Rights Coalition, 888-622-1510. I tell people if you walk away with one phone number tonight, make it be that. You could call this number for information as to ICE activity in the community, to activate rapid response teams if there are some. You could call this if you have questions or if you're interacting with ICE or if ICE is at your house. You could call this number with suspected violations of the Oregon Sanctuary Promise, and they could assist in reporting them to the state, because sometimes people are afraid to call a government agency, a state agency. So PIRC would help you lodge in that complaint. Another number for lawyers. PIRC will also connect you to the ECHO attorneys, which is a conglomerate of nonprofits and other attorneys that are working to help people in need. Now, there's also the Immigration Lawyers Association referral number, and I give the links in English and in Spanish. To find reputable immigration attorneys around the state. Just to kind of speed this up, I do talk to people about making sure they get a chance to talk to attorneys. You know, a lot of times people may have benefit, not a lot of times, that's wrong. I don't want to give the impression, because sometimes the mistaken impression is if they only paid money and got papers in. No, it's not that easy. But I think it's sad that many times people say, you know, I've been in this country so many years and I've never talked to anyone before. You're the first lawyer I'm talking to. So they should talk to an attorney, because there might be some type of benefit that they could qualify for that they don't know about. If you have legal residency, always keep your card on your person. If that card's expired or if you've lost it, renew it. Carry proof of your status. So if you have TPS or DACA or you have a work authorization through the U, have that on your person. If in your immigration court proceedings, have that on your person, because that shows you're in this country legally for the time being. Consider naturalization. If you've been a resident for 3 or 5 years, and depending if you're married to a U.S. citizen or in active military service, which I say is proof that being married to a U.S. citizen is like being at war. But if you've been 3 years, everyone else 5 years. I did this presentation really quick the other day, went over this slide, and someone came back to me and said, wait, I saw something about marijuana and hemp. What's that all about? Okay, this is where I always warn people about the conflict between state and federal law. State law, you could go to the same site where you could get your driver's license and get a marijuana handler's card. You could look at how you could legally have a dispensary. And so it gives the impression that, rightfully so, then the state of Oregon, it is legal. For the federal government, which is USCIS, it's still a narcotic. So you may as well be hanging out with Pablo Escobar as buying your whatever ounce or whatever. It's been many years since I've been in college. But there's severe consequences. If you're a non-US citizen, if you're working in a pot field, you're not eligible for naturalization. You know, and when we talked about expedited removal, they did say one situation where they would use that new definition of expedited removal is if someone's on an illegal pot grow. Now, hemp is on there. Why? Because sometimes if hemp isn't regulated closely enough, that legal hemp can turn into an illegal pot grow. So people sometimes, a lot of times, have questions on public charge issues. The Oregon Law Center, they're the ones that know this inside and out. They have a direct hotline, and the information is there. And I see people taking photos, and if you're taking photos of me, God bless you, and I'm sorry. But if you're wanting information from this, I will make this slide available to whoever's in charge of this, so that if anyone wants this, they could see it, they could print it out, okay? Knowledge is power, I don't hoard it. So if you guys want this, let me know, and I'll share the information. You could take pictures. I'm not calling anyone out for taking pictures, but I'm saying you could get a really good slide from this. Alma will talk a little bit about this. This is a great resource. I think Kathy probably talks about this too. And no questions. Oh, okay. Well, you may know that woman, Waynona LaDuke. She's known in these grounds. But we're not part of the problem, we're part of the solution. And now, no questions for now. But I just have to introduce her this way. You are now about to witness the strength of street knowledge. I present to you Dr. Alma Rosa Alvarez, who will talk to you about being good neighbors. Let me turn this off so there's no hot mic moments.
I'm using this one. All right, so a lot of times we have questions about how we can be good neighbors. And so from here on out, when I use neighbor, I'm using it to refer to our immigrant brothers and sisters. And so, you know, a lot of times people ask, and as we moved into this new administration, people are asking, what is it that we can do? You know, and so I want to share, I think, some really practical tips, and then our friend Kathy will share some other tips as well about what are some of the things that we can do. And some of them are really simple things. Oops, okay, sorry. This is like my first time using like one of these little dealies, so I'm kind of like, so for starters, check. You have learned some of the implications of current laws and executive orders, so give yourselves a hand because you've learned some things today about the law. John has shared some slides where you can familiarize yourself with local resources for immigrants. And at the end of my slide presentation, which I will also share for whomever is interested, so we'll share it with your group. You know, I have some of the repeats of local resources, but I also have some organizations, like for example, UNETE, that you can contact. And they help our immigrant brothers and sisters, our neighbors, all the time. So I'll have some of that information as well. Sometimes it's really difficult in these times to try to figure out what the lines are when we have immigrant neighbors and we want to ask them, really, like, are you okay? But sometimes we cross the line and we're like, do you have status? And it's coming from a really good place because as I see in the audience, I know there are a lot of really wonderful, caring people, right? But please do not ask neighbors about their legal status, right? That's sort of a little bit of a no-no. Sometimes it's through relationships, right, that people, as they feel like they trust you, will come to let you know. So for example, my neighbor was telling me that, and telling John, that through her relationship with someone that she works with or works for her, the person had expressed anxiety about their status and this new administration. And from that point on, because there's a relationship there, then she could, you know, inquire further about that neighbor's needs, right? So we're asking people to not ask about legal status, you know, until you have that kind of relational quality and until that person decides that they want to share that information with you. We're also asking folks to not draw attention to neighbors who are just trying to blend in. So if you find out that your neighbor doesn't have status, you know, don't out them, right? Don't say like, hey, my neighbor so-and-so, you know, who does X, Y, and Z, they don't have status, right? Don't out them. A lot of these folks, you know, they're trying to be just like you and me, right? And blending in into our society. Don't identify them in social media, even though you're thinking that you might be doing something really compelling. Like, hey, let's raise funds for this person for their legal fees. Don't do that, right? So be mindful of the privacy of minors. Sometimes our youth have really compelling stories and we want to like help them, right? And we want to like promote their stories, but be mindful that minors are a protected category just in general, right? And that we want to make sure that particularly for very vulnerable youth, we want to make sure that they're going to be safe. So really, we generally are like, let's build relationships. Invite your neighbors in. Invite them, get to know them, right? Exchange contact information if your neighbors are okay with it. Don't be weird about it, right? Don't be like, hey, I see you're, you know, Latinx. You want to share information, right? That would be a little bit weird. It's all about the relationship building, right? So I got this straight from Kathy Kesey, who's going to be presenting next. She's always said, you know, ask your neighbors once you establish that relationship, are you okay? Do you want to share? Is there anything you want to share? But once you have established that relationship, right? But do not pressure people because sometimes, even if you've established that relationship, for some folks, they just want to really hold that information in until they're really ready, right? And then if they share, actively listen for whatever it is that their needs really are. So sometimes the needs are, for example, right now, for a lot of people that have children, they're really scared about what's going to happen, like if their children are at school and they get picked up, right? And so maybe someone expresses, to Lori, hey, I'm really concerned about my children's welfare and what will happen to them if I'm deported, right? And and so maybe they have some kind of, and I want to say, many of the folks in this room are people that work with other people on volunteer bases, and you've been trained to listen actively and to know that sometimes the people who have the need just need a sounding board because they know ultimately what they really kind of want to do. So a lot of us are kind of problem solvers by nature in this room. And you kind of want to be like, I know what I can do to help you, right? But listen to them first to see if they have ideas and find out how you can kind of maybe be part of that plan. Occasionally, you'll find people that don't have ideas, and you came to this workshop and you now have resources, and maybe you can gently say, hey, I learned this the other day, and maybe this is a beginning place where you can, explore some information. Does that make sense? All right. I have an aunt who she passed away, a great aunt, and she had a roommate who lives in Chicago, and her roommate doesn't have status. And if you were following the news, right after the inauguration, Trump was deploying people to Chicago, most likely because it's a sanctuary city, and he wanted to sort of make an example of them, to Chicago to start the mass deportation. So a lot of people, like my aunt's friend, were really afraid to go to work, go to mass, go to buy groceries, etc. So maybe 3 weeks ago, I don't know where John is, but about 3 weeks ago, he got, a colleague of mine actually texted me and said, hey, I hear that there are raids happening in Phoenix and Medford. Is that true? Believe me, when something like that happens, people are going to be afraid to go out even for groceries, right? So something that you can do for a neighbor, especially if you hear that ICE raids are happening, is to check in with the person that you have a relationship with and to say, do you need meals? Do you need groceries? So in the Chicago experience, my great aunt's friend, her priest, went and delivered some food. Some of the parishioners of her church delivered some food. My cousin delivered some food, right? To allow this person to at least have some sustenance while they're waiting out the period of, ICE raids, right? So I'm just going to make like a sort of big blanket statement here. In general, and I'm speaking from a Mexican perspective, Mexicans don't really like sleepovers. We don't like letting our children go to sleepovers. And I'm just going to speak from my personal experience. I certainly didn't want the children over my house either, right? So, and I know that that's a big part of like the culture to do sleepovers. So there is a cultural piece there for us. Like I would say to my son, you can go until like 11 p.m. and then we're going to pick you up. That's just part of the way that we were raised. But you might also, with neighbors that are undocumented, for those of you that are parents or grandparents and you're used to this culture of sleepovers, be mindful as to why children might not be going on sleepovers. One, it's not part of our culture for many of us. And two, if you're undocumented, I think that there's like another sort of layer there. And so just be mindful of that. And again, we don't want to out families and be like, hey, little Mikey, Jose's not coming over because they're probably undocumented. No, right? We want to kind of be like, it's just not part of their culture, right? It's not something that culture really does, right? Immigration costs are expensive, right? And I don't know all of the prices for costs. Occasionally, like, I'll hear John say something like, "Oh, the costs went up again, and now it's this." And I'm really bad at memorizing things, so I don't know all of the costs. Paying for immigration attorneys is also costly. And this is not to say that John is making bank and stuff like that, but it's to say that, those costs can be some of the barriers. As he said, sometimes people qualify for particular benefits, but they don't have the money for those particular costs, right? There are organizations, for example, the Center for Nonprofit Legal Services and Catholic Charities, Catholic Charities is in Portland, and they are low cost or no cost in some cases, but they have really long waiting periods. And sometimes, and particularly in a period of time like this, I don't know that people really have the luxury to wait until they have the funds. So something that I know my neighbor is doing is, I think that she and several of her friends were like, we're gonna pull together resources to try to help pay for at least a consult to find out if a person has, even a possibility to have a benefit, an immigration benefit here in this country. Once someone finds out that they have a benefit, then obviously there will be the cost to the government, the cost for the lawyer, etc. But that's something that people can help with. I mentioned that a lot of folks are really concerned about what will happen to them if they are deported and their children are at school or at a friend's house or something like that, or at a sporting event. You can help your neighbors assemble their family plans. And I actually brought an example from the Oregon Law Center. And you can look at, you can go to the Oregon Law Center website, and they have these really wonderful packets that have, affidavits that people can do to get their documents in order in case they were to be separated from their children. You can help with the scanning of materials. You can help with the organizing of materials. Those are really super concrete things that you can help people do. Because as you can imagine, it's really scary to figure out what are all the things that you have to assemble to get all of your documents in order just in case. Now about ICE, and I think, I'm going to ask Kathy to shout out if there's anything that I'm sharing that is if you want to add on, or you can just come on up and share. This will probably be less of your experience, but it could be part of your experience. If you're seeing unmarked vehicles in a neighborhood or marked vehicles, and you have a neighbor that you know is undocumented, you can alert your neighbor, hey, I'm seeing this car here, you might not want to leave your house today, right? So that you can share that information. If a neighbor gets arrested, you heard John say that that he's telling people if there's a signed, warrant signed by a judge, turn yourself in and avoid the collateral damage. A lot of times, I've thought about this for myself. I'm like, man, if someone comes, I'm going to interfere in the arrest and I'm going to be like the human shield, right, or something. But we don't recognize that sometimes that attempt to interfere with an arrest could escalate and result in collateral arrests. So we are actually asking people to not interfere in an arrest. Am I still right on that, Kathy? Thank you. She says yes. And also, we need to think about how interfering, sometimes, or, cussing out like the ICE people or whatever, or throwing stuff at them, right? Could potentially, because I know some of you all, were around in the 60s and 70s. I know what you all did. I read my history book, right? It could result in harsher treatment for the person that is being taken in. And we want to minimize the humiliation or the possibility of someone being treated with little or no dignity, right? Now, this is going to seem like contrary to what I just said. However, while we're asking you to not interfere with an arrest, you can still document encounters. You all have phones, most of you. Are there any Luddites in the room? You can include the officer's clothing, vehicles, statements that you heard from the officers, from the person being taken in, from witnesses. Why would we say to check and see? Because if someone is helping, like what John was saying, we live in a sanctuary state. And sometimes it's really difficult to know, like, why an arrest is happening. Okay, so let me just say, a student of mine recently shared with me that someone from her church was picked up, and she said that a particular law enforcement agency, local, had been involved. Okay? Now, she's hearing this from a third party, right? And I said, well, did anyone document it? Did anyone take pictures? Now, there are moments in time when local law enforcement can get involved when there is an ICE pickup. And those would be human trafficking, okay, drug trafficking, and child pornography. Those are some of the really big cases in which local law enforcement does help. So sometimes we may not know what, maybe someone is being picked up and they have those charges. But let's say that someone is being picked up and they don't have those charges. Now, we can report that ICE activity, and better to report it just in case, to the Portland Immigrant Rights Coalition hotline, right? Because if you're seeing someone locally aiding, and they're a local law enforcement agency, and it's not, as John likes saying, El Chapo Guzman, or that type of crime, you want to make sure that our local law enforcement is abiding by Oregon sanctuary law. If you feel like there's been a compromise or someone has compromised our Oregon sanctuary law, you can call the hotline to report suspected violations, right? Now, let's say that a neighbor has been picked up. Oftentimes, the people that are left behind are a mess. I've been witness to people coming to try to find John. We had a neighbor knock on every single door of our block trying to find John because their brother had been picked up. A lot of times the person doesn't know that they could find the ICE detainee locator. I'm going to share that information in a later slide, but you can familiarize yourself with that information so that if you had someone that is your neighbor and something like that happened to one of their family members, you can be really clear-headed to help with the location of their loved one. Does that make sense? All right. You can be the contact person delegated for temporary custody of children to pick up children and avoid the DHS law enforcement sort of system. That's sort of a bigger ask. It's a big responsibility, but I know that in this group, some of you are going to be up for that. You could also help meet people at court. I used to have a bullet point that said something like, give people rides, to to court, etc. Unfortunately, if you know that someone is undocumented, you might now be seen as someone who is transporting and smuggling undocumented people. Other actions that you can take, You can call your senators and representatives and tell them to support anti-immigrant, wait a minute, not support anti-immigrant legislation. Thank you. I'm like, what? Okay. So, in Oregon right now, you can call your state senators and representatives and ask them to say no to the modification of the 2021 Oregon Sanctuary Law. There are legislators in Oregon that want to modify the law and to make it less of a sanctuary law. So you can call your state representatives and senators and tell them, no modification, thank you. All right? You can volunteer to give people ESL classes. The UNETE folks, they're the hookup because they offer spaces for those ESL classes. And then this is a perfect segue to invite Kathy Kesey up because I have some local resources. For me, in this valley, UNETE does a great, great job with our immigrant population. Yay. I also want to tell you that Kathy Kesey and Dagoberto Morales also are working with folks that have been trafficked in the cases of marijuana. So their organization is doing great work. And then, as I said before, I have like the online detainee finder. This one takes you directly to the English page. So if you want to take a look at that. I think some of these other pieces of information John already had on slides, but we're going to make all of the slides available to you. And now I'm going to pass it on to Kathy and your slides. Push the little, unless you want me to do it for you.
So UNETE has been serving the farm worker and Latino immigrant community since 1996. So next year will be like our 30th anniversary. So we're pretty proud of that. I'm just going to skip through some of these. We're really proud that our staff truly represents the community that we serve. We have bilingual, bicultural families. All of us are bilingual, English, Spanish, some more English. We have prior farm workers, we have first-generation immigrants, we have second-generation immigrants, we have, like I mentioned, bicultural families, we have DACA recipients. So I really am proud of the fact that we really, truly represent our community. We're aged from like 19 to 74. I'm not the oldest one, not this time. But so we have, through all that experience, we have a wide knowledge base, I would say, to be able to provide linguistically and culturally appropriate services. I'm just going to skip through most of these because you can kind of see what we do, though, in the meantime. All right. Okay. So as we, oops. I got to go back. All right. So as Alma and John were mentioning, the community is really scared. They won't even, like Alma said, they're not even going out to buy groceries. Some people aren't even sending their children to school because they heard, again, that those are no longer safe places. So we're doing a lot of Know Your Rights trainings around town. We were supposed to go live on Facebook, but for some reason, it's never happened in the past. We've never not been able to go live on Facebook, but this time, for some reason, we couldn't. So we're going to continue to do those types of plans. We're also going to be doing some presentations for employers about how to protect the workers in their workplace. So these are some other ways that you can help. Of course, we can always use donation of non-perishable items. So like the maseca, what they use to make the tortillas, long grain rice, pinto beans, some different kinds of canned corn. mixed vegetables, mixed fruit, things like that. We can always use those. We're also requesting, if you're interested or if you're a prior teacher, or even if you don't have any teaching experience, to become a volunteer teacher. We have one of our teachers here in the front row, Bob Kaplan. So those are other areas where you can help us out. We're also doing, ideally, the rapid response team training is going to be on March 7th. So what the purpose of the rapid response team is to document ICE encounters. So if you're interested in that training, let me know. Maybe we can have a sign-up list on the back table so we can get your email and your contact information. So the point of the rapid response team is not to interfere at all, like Alma was saying, with the detention. It is merely to document. And so if you want to do civil disobedience and lay in front of the ICE, please don't sign up for them. Please don't sign up. It just amps up the officers. It amps up the families. You know, it always seems to have worse outcomes for the families who are really the most vulnerable and the ones that we're most worried about in these kinds of situations. And also this whole idea of like sanctuary neighbors, which was kind of like what Alma was talking about too, to be able to help people fill out. We have these family plans. We have copies of these in the back, so you can help go through the different pages of this, help them. It's kind of basic documents like social security numbers, if they have insurance policies, you know, what are the title or things for their cars, where how to gather all that information. If you know of families who need help with this, we also have, like I mentioned, we have our bilingual staff, and so we can also scan all their documents. We can put them on a thumb drive, or we can save it into the cloud so they can have copies. We can make copies of whatever documents and things they need. So if they just can reach out to UNITE, then we can help them with that. There's also, this is the older version. This is not the updated version of the family plan through the Oregon Law Center. But on the back of this packet, it has examples of the judicial warrants. So it has an example of the judicial warrant and an example of the ICE warrant. So I think this is helpful. And it also has a few pages in here that has the forms they're already printed out about the delegation of parental authority. So if you want to give have your child be with a certain family member or whatever. One thing I would really caution people on, though, we were at a human trafficking conference it was like last year, I think at this time, and I really stress in these presentations that to be very, very careful about who you're giving your child to, because essentially they're going to have complete control over this child, essentially. So, and the most disturbing statistic that we heard at this conference was that 70% of human trafficking is from a family member. So please, really, really, I know that some people are desperate, so they just, I'm going to leave them, with, Aunt Jill or whatever, but please remind them of the fact that at least 70% of children who were sold into prostitution or in the sex trade or something like that, 70% are by family members. So here's another way you can help. So with the Oregon Health Plan, which is a state Medicaid program, we were finally, after several years, we were part of a statewide coalition that finally, after several years, we got the right for undocumented people to be able to qualify for Oregon Health Plan if they met the income requirements. So anyone, regardless of immigration status, could now qualify. So now we're trying to do the same thing for food stamps, for SNAP benefits. So if you're interested, please call Jeff Golden and Pam Marsh, and tell them to support this. Right now, it's a little more narrowed, so there's like for individuals who are under 25 and people that are over 55. That's kind of how we started out with the Oregon Health Plan. And so this is like the newest strategy for that. So please, if you're interested, we're having a Zoom meeting on this Friday at noon to learn more, if you'd like to learn more about this whole Food for All Oregonians program. Food, for me, is a human right. I think everybody should have the right to have access to food. So if you're interested in signing up for that, you can let us know. And here they are. Here are our guys. Well, some of them are. One clearly is not, Mr. Bentz, but the other two I think are on our side, or for the most part, they're on our side. So be sure to give them a call. Every day is fine, especially Mr. Bentz. Yeah, especially Mr. Bentz. You give him a call every single day if you're interested in doing that, and let him know just how really unhappy we are. There's also, I have a couple other things. We have the famous red cards. If you want to take some, there's Spanish on one side, English on the other side. In case of, so these would be used to give to an ICE officer or a police officer to tell them that you want to exercise your right to remain silent. And then there's also a little space at the bottom where you can write your attorney's name or your phone number on there as well. And we also have these keychains, which please, if you know people who may need to access this PERC line, it's a statewide hotline, so no matter where they're calling from in the whole state, they can access this line. So we have these we've made these little keychains to be able to hand out to people too. So anyway, I think that's all that I had for you all tonight. I forgot one. On our website, which is UNETE Oregon, UNETE Oregon, all one word, .org, we have a page where it has all of the information about, it's called like the immigration resource page. And if you go to that page, we have things about how to protect, for employers, how to protect themselves. We have the Know Your Rights, the whole Know Your Rights sheet, like it's in Spanish. It's in Spanish, but there's that. We also have the newest versions of the Protect Your Family from the Oregon Law Center and Latino Network. It's all that same package. And we have a variety of other different things on there. If you want to get more keychains, you can reach out to us, or the red cards. All of that is available on our thing. And one other thing I'd like to mention too, because of this, the delegation of parental authority, there's going to be legal fees associated with that if the family decides to go for a power of attorney, which is much more important, I think, in my personal opinion. The delegation of parental authority can be accepted by some places. It will never be accepted by any financial institution. It will be probably accepted by schools. Medical, maybe. So the real goal would be to have the family get like a power of attorney. And so again, there's the legal costs associated with that. So if you have any interest in donating to help people with legal costs, we do happen to have a donate page on our website, which might not surprise you, but it's pretty easy to use, and then we'll get you a receipt for your donations. So if you have any other, I don't know if Alma or John, if you're going to take any questions, or.
I think we need to close out.
Okay.
We have the church only for
Oh, all right.
Oh, yeah, we don't want him to throw us out. All right. Thank you, Kathy. All right, that was a wealth of knowledge. And I would like to thank our presenters one more time for their time and their generosity. Thank you. And speaking of generosity, John and Almarosa, and I didn't hit up Kathy yet, but they're going to allow us to put this on our Ashland Together, Ashland Sunrise Project website. So the slides, you'll be able to get additional information on the website. Please make sure to scan the UR code, and so that you can be attached to Ashland Together. You can get additional information, and we can be good neighbors and do no harm. So thank you everyone for coming. Safe travels. I want to let everybody know.
very well.